Welcome to On the Bench. I am your host for this episode, Brennan Sinone, joined by Zach Blostein. Just the two of us today. Do you want to do a little like Will Smith rendition of just the two of us, Zach, or probably not?
No, thank you.
Okay. How was my blinking at the start? I was very conscious of it.
It seemed more normal this time.
Good. All right, so let's get going into this episode. There's some good recruiting news to talk about, which is always fun. Also want to celebrate what should be a national holiday, and that is the return of EA Sports College Football video game, College Football 25, previously known as the NCAA series. So different title, same premise though, and a happy CFB25 day to all who celebrate. Before we get going any further, a shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Chattanooga Whiskey. I want to highlight a specific release that I'm super excited about, and I'm going to highly recommend to anyone out there who likes bourbon because it's a semi-annual release. It's going to be unique, and it's going to be really, really high quality. And that's their Bottle and Bond series. It's from spring of 2020 vintage. So that means it's going to be at least 4 years old, but it's coming from 2020. So there you go. It's 4 years old. That's what makes it Bottle and Bond. It's going to be 100 proof. And this, Zach, is from their Wheated Mash Bill, which I think their Wheated Mash Bill might be my favorite thing of everything they do. I have a cast strength one that's super sweet and delicious and rich. Christine loved it when I brought it to camp last year. So yeah, Chattanooga Whiskey, their Bottle and Bond release, semi-annual release coming out here in July. It'll be on sealbacks for a little bit, but you can find it in Florida. Let's see what states. Florida. I got the release right here. Florida, Alabama, Colorado, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Wisconsin. Only $52.99 a bottle. It's going to be really, really high quality stuff. So Chattanooga Whiskey, please check it out. And this is a bottle you're going to want in your collection. Can be highly recommended. All right, Zach, FSU got a commitment this weekend. Let's talk about all right. It's Daejon McCutchen, 4-star wide receiver from Lovejoy, Texas. Absolutely incredible film and production as a junior. We'll get into like why it's a big win for FSU, but let's talk about a little bit about the Daejon McCutchen recruitment, and more so, Zach. I'm interested in like the Saturday morning like intrigue, and I don't want to say panic, but like there was a frenzy for us covering it as we were trying to figure out what the hell was happening. I think that's the starting point here.
Yeah, I mean it was it was an interesting recruitment because I'd covered him for the majority of this year and into last year, just because it was made clear to me that he was a guy that, despite being from Texas, Florida State felt like they had a realistic shot at, which isn't, a common occurrence, right? They're not going to Texas a lot of times for skilled players, but McCutchen, had a high interest in Florida State. He has family that lives in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so he's got ties to the state. I think his dad is originally from Florida as well, so it made sense leading up to his decision why Florida State would be the pick. However, in the weeks leading up to his announcement, I was told that it was a USC versus FSU battle, and there were points that I felt like USC was in a better position than Florida State. That's why, if you look at my bad prediction on Saturday morning, it was in favor of USC because of a few reasons. First of all, no one knew what Daejon McCutchen was going to do. He had not informed any of the coaching staffs involved of his plans, what he was trying to do. And I don't think he did with Florida State until like a couple minutes before the announcement. I'm pretty sure he called Norvell, like not even Ron Dugans, the receivers coach, and let him know of his decision. It was going to be FSU, but that was minutes before he announced on Saturday. So yeah, I mean, leading up to it, just didn't have word on where he was going. There was some messaging, at least what was being told to Florida State side, that USC's NIL offer was substantial and not something that was going to be matched. Whether that's real or not, that can be debated. I completely understand that. So
USC's NIL has come into question, I think.
Yeah, I mean they've had issues. Like it's a public known thing that they have issues paying players, and I've heard certain players just haven't been paid at all.
They'll maintain that it's fixed. For just to be fair to the USC side, we obviously don't cover that, but that is a thing. That is a dynamic that's at play, and we've seen players decommit there. We've seen guys enter the portal. It's a thing.
But nevertheless, Florida State wins out. Just a massive win, because this is a guy they've been invested in for a long time. They hosted him on campus last summer for the first time. That was for a camp setting. They absolutely loved him in that setting. And after that, it was, full court press until now. They got him on campus for a game last year, then back for the Legacy weekend. I believe it was that date he visited during the spring, came back for his OB at the end of June. That's ultimately, what helped close it out for Florida State. I'll let you talk about what he is and as a player more, but just a great kid and someone I think is going to significantly help Florida State's receiver room in the future.
Well, real quick before we break down his game, and we can transition into it here, Zach. But like the where we were not even a month ago, 3 weeks ago, we weren't sure what the wide receiver recruiting would look like, and that's because they were in position for multiple guys, high end players, but we didn't know if they were leading for any of them. Yeah. And now here we are in July 15th, recording this episode. You're halfway through July, and you have two blue chip wide receivers committed, with CJ Wiley being the other one. You went into Georgia and beat Georgia for one of them, and then how much of a take Daejon McCutchen was at Texas is I think up for some.
He was a take at Texas when he committed to Florida State, but that's a difference between being a guy that they're aggressively pursuing.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah, tier differences, but so still two really massive I'm not undermining it. Two really massive recruiting wins for FSU with guys with really different skill sets, complementary skill sets. We've seen that a lot in this class. Same with the defensive tackles. You've got guys who feed off of each other. With Wynn and Myron Charles. There's a lot of long-term building block type of stuff happening with what you're recruiting at these premium positions: wide receiver, defensive tackle, defensive end. You need to get a second one in this class, but you're loading up on premium positions and getting high quality players at those positions. So with Daejon McCutchen, he is ranked by 24/7 Sports as the number 221st player nationally with a 91 grade. I think he just got a bump up, if I'm not mistaken. He was at 90, now moved up to 91. We move a little slower with the grades. You kind of gradually will increase guys rather than trying to reduce the grades like in some previous years. The composite, however, is extremely high on Daejon McCutchen nationally. He's a top 100 prospect there, 93rd, with a 95.26 composite grade. So either way you cut it, he's being projected as a draftable player, someone with NFL upside. Size, not ideal. 5'11", 175. Some of the speed numbers, he runs track. He's more of a 200 guy, doesn't run the 100 meter, and didn't run particularly well that a couple years ago. But also that was a couple years ago. Physically, Zach, you mentioned this the other day, we were talking on the phone, his production jumped a ton between sophomore and junior year of high school. And you have to wonder how much more athletically imposing he became, right? How much more put together. So that's a dynamic to watch. Those are the negatives, really. Once we get past that, the positives are fast. There is a ton to really like about his game. I think he's super subtle as a route runner, very polished with his technique. Clay Fink, for us, our intern, had talked about his hands. What did he call them? Not aggressive hands. I was hoping you knew. Just fill it in. Basically cocky hands. Oh, kid show. Arrogant hands. Thank you, Zach. Arrogant hands. Well, we were a second away from me not doing that. Oops. But the hands are he's extremely confident in what he can do at high pointing the ball, going after it with one hand. Very natural, and how he tracks the football. Mentioned the route running. That is extremely polished at a really high level. I think he plays bigger than the 5'11", 175 would indicate too. He goes up and gets it consistently. He's very aggressive. Maybe the top trait though to me. So I remember there was this kid growing up with Chris Warren, who ended up being a 4-year starter at Ole Miss for basketball. And he was just shorter. He was 5'10", 5'11". So he ended up playing out in Europe professionally. But in middle school and high school, he was dominant because he was just clearly better than everyone else around him. And he could dunk like from the time he was in 8th grade. He shot the ball at a really high level. But the thing that really stood out about Chris was that he just like processed the game so much quickly. Like I remember my dad watching me, like he just sees it differently than everyone else on the court, myself included. Thanks, Dad. And I feel that way, kind of like that processing, that ability to kind of just sense things differently than the speed of the game. Like you see coverages kind of unfolding. You get a sense of how defenders are closing in on you, and you can do something about it. Like Daejon McCutchen sees the game at a different rate. I think these are all skills that I'm talking about that point to him being a really high floor level player. And that's not to say there's not a ceiling there as well, because I think he's an NFL draft pick type of guy. But there's just a ton there in terms of what he can do early on. The sure-handedness, the route running, and just the processing are all really, really high level. His production was also awesome. He plays in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area. I think Class 5A are fairly highly up there. So he's playing like good level of competition. What were his numbers last year, Zach? Do you have that in front of you by any chance?
92 catches for 1,400 yards and like 15 touchdowns. I don't have it in front of me. That's just me going off the dome. But that is.
I got it. 92, 1,430, and 20 touchdowns. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. And that's, it's not like he's playing like super low classifications, 5A Texas football. So, yeah. I mean, from that product, like the biggest thing for me is like, the sophomore to junior production jump. I mean, he goes from 25 catches for 274 yards and 2 touchdowns to 92 catches for 1,400 yards and 20 touchdowns in a year. Yeah. That's crazy.
And again, when we talk about like the totality of what you've brought in at wide receiver, CJ Wiley also extremely productive at a good classification level in Georgia. He's got well over 1,000 yards. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but like that's it's really impressive what they've put together. And again, those complementary skill sets: CJ Wiley fast, long at 6'4", and you have more of like kind of a slot receiver. And I'm not saying he's only going to play slot. I think you move him all over the field, but more that body type. And when you think of a slot receiver, you think of really, really solid route running and hands and shiftiness, and that's more like the way you think about Daejon McCutchen. So those are 2 really good building blocks, and I think it allows you, Zach, like to go big game hunting at wide receiver. Is there anyone else that they're targeting right now? Do you continue to recruit other position, or just kind of rest on your laurels and say like, yeah, this is what we have?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to continue to recruit other players. Just to name a few guys that are still technically on the board, Vernell Brown out of Orlando Jones, the 4-star wide receiver. I expect him to commit to UF in this next week or so. I think his commitment date's the 21st. And then Khalil Lockett, the other receiver out of Texas that FSU's targeting, 5-star. I don't expect that to be Florida State. I would anticipate him going to Alabama or Texas at this point. But if you want some names of guys that they're going to continue to recruit, I think one to note is definitely Josh Moore out of South Florida, the Pembroke Pines, West Broward prospect. He's committed to UF. He committed to UF in June. FSU lost that battle, but the general consensus around that recruitment is that one's not over with, especially considering the school he's committed to with the, coach uncertainty with Billy Napier and the Gators' upcoming season. So would anticipate he's a prospect they continue to communicate with. We'll see if others emerge. I think they'd ultimately be fine just signing CJ Wiley and Daejon McCutchen. They feel awesome about those 2. But I mean, they're going to do their job and make sure that, if there is another option that they feel like would help them, they'll go after him. So
FSU currently ranks 17th in our composite rankings for their class, but they only have 12 commitments. 11 of them are blue chip players. So the blue chip ratio baseline that you've established here seems to be absurd. The quality is really high. Your average recruit ranking in the composite is 92.89 overall. Here are the teams ahead of them, Zach: Georgia, LSU, Oregon, and Ohio State, which Ohio State with 23 commits at 93.89 is absurd, but they got it rolling right now recruiting. That's it. You're 5th nationally in your recruit rankings.
Yeah, and they're among the top 46 teams. They're the only school with they have the lowest amount of commits in the top 46.
So room to improve potentially, although like some of the board is starting to become solidified here, like some of the options. Like Ty Haywood, for example, a guy they probably ran second to commits to Alabama, and that's a big domino to fall. That's a big piece off the table for you. So now the Josh Petty recruitment, for example, just becomes even more important if you want to get that.
But if you land a guy like Josh Petty, I mean, that's gonna skyrocket you into definitely the top 10, I would think, because that's a 5-star prospect. And yeah, I mean, that is an important thing to know, and I want to write more about that. But if you look at their top targets list, like it's really dwindling down. Just from guys that haven't made decisions yet. I mean, you can count them on two hands how many guys that are realistically in the picture for Florida State. So I mean, that might mean it's time to expand some boards. I think obviously we've talked at length about linebacker. Don't need to get into that, but I mean that's a position that the Florida State definitely needs to land a few guys, and I could see that being expanded. And then I mean, you look at I think DB they'll be fine. Running back they'll be fine because they have 2 top targets that have made decisions. But maybe edge rusher, because I mean they really only have one guy on the board at that spot in Jared Smith, and I don't anticipate that being Florida State. So yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting to see. And I thought Daejon McCutchen was a huge piece because of the lack of other realistic options at receiver. And landing him is just a huge deal and a big win for that staff.
So things look pretty good for FSU in terms of recruiting right now. Potential for a great class. I don't know. Should I update the class calculator? Probably. We'll wait a little bit, see what other dust settles here on the next month or so. But like the path to a top 10 class certainly exists, which would be the best in the Mike Norvell era. So it's
the only thing that would hold it back is obviously, I mean, if they have some flips or anything like that, but also just that, like you mentioned, the quantity. If they get to like, I mean, you pretty much have to get to like that 20 mark in order to be a top 10 class when it's all said and done. So we'll see.
I wonder, part of their strategies, like in the transfer portal era, if the emphasis that the FSU's placing right now on blue chip talents, you look at all the battles they're winning to go ahead and get these recruits. Like every single one of them, you're beating someone marquee, or like going to Nebraska to get a kid from Omaha, right, and beating out Nebraska. Like there's some significant win that you're getting for almost everyone. I wonder if like this is just the new norm for them in the kind of the neighborhood they're recruiting in. Is they're going to get as many blue chip players as possible, but then work really diligently to not reach, even if they're not hitting a specific position group. Like if you don't get a second defensive end, if you don't get a linebacker that you feel good at, you just go to the portal for younger guys and try to work through it there. Like I wonder if that, like what I'm saying is, Zach, is like a 15 to maybe 20 player max class is kind of the new norm if you're not able to go ahead and secure blue chip talent at every spot.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's definitely being talked about. And I definitely think they're moving away from like reaching on like high school players in the sense of like, hey, we think this guy has some cool traits, but it's going to be a 3-year project. Like, I don't think Florida State's keen on taking those types at least as often. So, and that could lend itself to what you're saying, Brennan, like, them being more open to using the portal for those spots, which, I mean, if you look at the data, like it's definitely what they've done the past few years. So.
All right, transitioning to our next topic, I want to talk T for a couple minutes, Zach. How's that sound?
I'm excited. Party.
I was teasing the T the other day on the message board, and we're going to basically, I think I have enough information, intel and whatnot to go ahead and do a little bit of T every single day over at Knowles247.com for each position group, basically. I think we have enough like inside information, which we work really hard on. And Zach and I pride ourselves in go ahead and trying to hustle and get that information. And That's been something that we've done consistently the last few years, and I think you guys have responded well and liked it. And that information often proves to be accurate of what people around the program are expecting, which makes us look good in turn, and just it works out nicely in that sense. So if you're an Knowles 24/7 subscriber, you're gonna be able to get access to everything that we're doing here in the next week or so. And if you're not, we currently have a promo that goes for one more day through Tuesday. I think it's 50% off annually at this point. And thank you to all who have subscribed. Like, it's been really awesome for us as a network, and specifically as a website trying to run a business here. We appreciate the patronage. I think we've been in the top 2 or 3 nationally throughout this promo for the entire month. There's obviously been really cool recruiting stuff going on, and Zach does an amazing job covering it. And now it's my turn to kind of to carry things a little bit with some of the team stuff, and so trying to throw some VIP information out there for you guys. But we'll do a little bit of a tease here, Zach, as you've accumulated tea, and as I've sent you kind of the stuff that I've gotten, cross-checking, referencing notes. I guess what's been maybe like the most interesting tidbit that you've picked up so far?
Trying to think through it. I mean, I think
I know
so far. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying not to spoil all your tea that's coming later this week. So let me go off the stuff that dropped today about the running backs. I think this staff fully believes that like Lawrence Toafili is the complete package, and I think a lot of people, when you think LT, it's hey, like, he's this gadget back. He, his best trait is his receiving ability. Like, they feel like he has grown a ton as a running back, like a pure running back. They feel like he can run between the tackles, do everything that's needed at that spot within a Mike Norvell offense. So they're sky high on him from anyone you talk to in the program. I mean, it's glowing remarks about LT.
Yeah, that's been consistent for a little while now. It's just like great when you hear multiple people talking about the same player. I think that lends itself to a lot of confidence in like what we expect and kind of formulating our opinions, because the staff's been so and just people around the program in general have been so accurate with what they expect for the last few years. It's been really good. So it leads, and then we get to go see LT at practice like in the spring, and you're like, yes, like he's up to nearly 200 pounds now, and it looks legitimately different. It's not hindering his speed. If anything, he's like more explosive. So LT's a dude. Everyone that we ask about, not even ask about like this specific player, like this is being brought up to us, is Mekhi Danzy. I think that might be the most like, and it's probably the reason why I spent so much money on him in our bidding draft the other day. Mekhi Danzy is a guy that like we've heard really good things about in the running back room. We'll have to see like when the pads come on, how he handles that level of physicality. But like Zach's reporting, my reporting, it's all kind of co-aligns there to where FSU is extremely excited about him in the running back room. Let's see, maybe one or two more little morsels of information. How about defensive tackle KJ Sampson is someone that FSU is getting excited about. I think that's an important one, Zach, for the outlook of the defensive tackle group.
My underclassmen draft is looking better and better by the day.
That reminds me, while you say that, I'm going to pull up our official visit draft that we did to see who, because you had McCutchen. So
oh God, yeah. The rest of my draft board, it was awful on that one.
We'll see.
With KJ Sampson, I mean, if you think about FSU's defensive tackle depth, it's one of the big question marks on defense this upcoming year, just because you have a lot of unproven guys behind the two certified, what we expect to be starters, and Darrell Jackson and Josh Farmer. Behind them, I mean, you've got a guy like Daniel Lyons, Grady Kelly, Tamiwa Deroje. Like, these guys are, Tamiwa has experience, not a ton, but if you look, I got like KJ Sampson, a blue chip recruit from last year, has been in that program for a year, kind of learning from Coach Odo Higgins. I've been told for, probably this entire year that he's a guy that really takes to coaching. Like, it's something that, I think that's a trait, that Odell looks for specifically when recruiting players, and KJ Sampson definitely, that check that box, both as a recruit and, after he's got on campus. And I think that's going to lend himself to, get better, because guys that take to Coach Odell's hard coaching
Coaching.
are going to become great players. I mean, that's proven. So I think KJ is kind of ascending right now, and him being a guy that you can not count on, but count on for, I guess, a reasonable amount of snaps a game, would be huge, because they need D tackle depth, and it can't be a massive fall off, is what I'm saying.
And that seems to be the expectation, is that KJ will be part of the answer, part of the solution for depth this year. And I'll write that more in depth in the next couple days here when we get to defensive tackle day, in the preview series that we're doing. But I think the way that the program is viewing its depth at defensive tackle, and maybe the way that outsiders, including ourselves, have viewed it, are different. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. Like, there's confidence in that they'll have a legitimate 6-man rotation that they can go to this year. So yeah, those are some things that we'll have for you. Much more depth of news and information and insights into the program coming up here in the throughout the next week or so, which we're getting close to. Like, camp's 10 days away. Like, it's here. ACC kickoff is a week away. It'll be next Monday. So like we're here, we're in it. It's all happening very, very quickly. We made it through the dog days of summer, and helping us, Zach, in getting through these last few days of football-less summer. College football 25 is back. It comes out at 4 p.m. here on Monday evening. If you subscribed or paid for the deluxe package. I did. I knew I couldn't not play it for the 3 or 4 days until other people could. That wasn't how I'm wired. And I've been watching so many videos and getting so hyped for it, and getting my strategies together and whatnot. So yeah, I had to go ahead and get the deluxe.
Yeah, I did too. I don't think I originally thought I would, but just watching all the videos and realizing the amount of FOMO I'm going to have if I don't, I couldn't deal with it. So.
You mentioned the amount of the marketing that they've done with this, and it was going to sell well no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be so much excitement after 11 years of not having a game. But it's been like a master class in how they've gone about promoting this.
Oh yeah, I mean, they've done teasers the entire month. I know it. They always release this game in July, so it's not like a new thing. But releasing in July was a good idea, because this is the most dead month when it comes to college football. Stuff going on, just because fall camps
or rabid
hard to get. And people are anticipating the season, which starts next month. So yeah, I mean, just a masterclass in marketing. The live streams that they're doing with all these influencers and former NFL players and all that this weekend was cool. I have it up on my TV right now, the countdown until
ready to go.
Yeah. Did
you see the Travis Hunter live stream?
Oh yeah, where he's the offensive line can't block. It's realistic. But Shadur tweeted afterwards that he was talking about last year's offensive line guys, because that makes it a lot better.
Okay, yeah, much better. That's who he
sure
was
none of those guys. I mean, probably none of those guys are on the team anymore, because Dion probably kicked them.
Yeah, but they were playing with the current offensive line. Yeah. Anywho, let's see a few things here. The Battle's End is going to be doing live stream, I think, from 11 or noon on Tuesday up till 7 o'clock.
They're having a special guest.
Yeah, they'll have FSU players facing off against each other, playing, and probably just talking about the season and stuff too. And I will be joining as well, as what Zach's hinting at. So you guys can see me play horribly and not be really good for the first hour. And I think kind of just waiting for it's like the appetizer. It's not really.
Wait, is it today?
No, it's tomorrow.
Okay.
Tuesday. It'll be Tuesday.
Buyer Sonone, you're doing drills all night tonight to prepare for tomorrow.
I have one of my best friend and I have been playing the college football, the NCAA game together in perpetuity for the last 10 years, to where we'll take over a dynasty and duel against each other, who could do a better job. And we do it all the time. And so this is going to be a holiday for us, and we're going to start playing it. Tonight we're going to take over a dynasty. He's actually going to come up for the weekend, and we'll play and hang out for a little bit too.
Is he going to sleep over?
Yeah, he is going to sleep over. We have a guest bed though, because I'm an adult now, but it is basically an adult sleepover, grown up sleepover. But he was like, "Yo, what, like 4 o'clock, we'll get a dynasty going." I was like, "No, I want to do drills for the first 2 or 3 hours." So yeah, I'll be doing some practicing. I've been playing Madden, which I hate. It's just an awful video game and not fun, but just to kind of get ready for a more modern style of gameplay. So I've been trying so I don't embarrass myself, not just on the live stream, but I'm sure we'll be playing against subscribers and people on the board. And
Dude, they gotta make you play like an FSU player. That'd be great. Who do you think you could beat?
probably none of them. Probably none of them.
Who do
Everyone's
you
probably
think's
much
the,
more.
who do you think's the best on the team?
Uh, Probably would have been Tate Rodemaker. He's not on the roster anymore, though. Played a lot of video games. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. So, anyways, transitioning there. I always want to be part of an inside joke. What what's the strategy going to be for if we take over an FSU dynasty? I personally think like you, myself, Dane, and Clay should all take over an FSU dynasty and see who can like do the best job in like a 5-year window. I think there'd be some level of like interest of that on the message board. I'm going to do that. I got at least some people say they want me to do it. Like what would the strategy be to the recruiting elements, and how would you go about building like an FSU dynasty when you are the head coach, Zach?
I mean, you know me, I'm going to go recruiter for my coaching tree or whatever to start. I just think that, I mean, if you look at FSU and in real life, like
I'm picturing a linebacker board of like like the 35 players you can add. 30 of them are going to be linebackers.
I'm just the entire board. I think that'd be really funny. I'm going to do an FSU dynasty, but the only position I can recruit is linebacker. No, I mean I think recruiter. I've looked at some of the videos, and it seems like that tree is pretty useful. I mean the one, I think there's one where it gives you like in-game boosts for players, which is big early on, especially if you have like a bad. I'm not saying like with Florida State specifically, but like at a school with like a bad quarterback or something, you can like boost their rating and try to win early, which I could see the value of too. But I think for me, like the recruiting aspect of it seems like the recruiting hours are going to be an important resource, especially at schools that are not as high caliber at Florida State. But at FSU, I think being able to land like super high profile recruits and have them come in at high overalls and be able to I think that the second tree I'll try to unlock is the developing one, because that playing no longer a sponsor of this podcast, but Football Coach College Dynasty, I learned a lot about just the recruiting and balancing of developing. Like I learned that those were the two most important aspects in a game like that in dynasty mode, and being able to have big off-season developments because you want players to reach their potential or whatever, right? I think that those are the two trees I'm gonna unlock first. And I just gave you my strategy.
Zach's been very, very squirrely about the strategy. Like he's been taking notes, and I kind of forced him to go ahead and spill it here on the podcast for the
What
sake.
if I was misleading you?
Oh, so you're lying to myself and the audience.
Do you think if we did an online dynasty, we'd make it like you can't, like we're only picking like Sunbelt teams or something?
Yeah, that would be the most fun.
Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be fun to be taken over.
So
like
I didn't play a ton of online dynasty back when I had the original game. I played like one, I think, but it just wasn't like super well put together. Do you recruit against each other?
Yeah, you're all recruiting the same players, which would be fun. Like in the Sun Belt, like if there's a bunch of, your Georgia Southern and Georgia State or whatever, trying to recruit against the same guy in the, in the middle of the state or something like that. Like, yeah, that'd be fun. What you're thinking about? You're just thinking about flipping over commitment for me right now. I'm gonna go motivator.
Try to recruit a linebacker.
No, you're gonna have them all wrangled up. It's gonna be linebacker board exclusively for you. I'm gonna go the motivator route for Florida State as the head coach. I think that's the way to go. That's the one that gets you the development traits. And here's gonna be my secret, Zach. I'm going to, if he's ranked anywhere near like decently to where I can be salvageable and play a few games with him each season, and Luke Kromenhoek is who I'm going to start at quarterback.
Year one?
Yep. If he's decent, if he's 75 or higher, I think I'll start with him. And if the development trait is high, which we'll
I think
see.
he'll be 75 or higher because, like, if you look at some of he'll be around that range because DJ Lagway is 80 overall and he's the number one quarterback in that class. Luke's 5 spots behind him or something.
Yeah. So I'll go ahead, take some lumps early, and build it out with the development traits to like.
Is that important? Like, have you seen playing Luke Kromenhoek for those games like that? That increases.
I don't know. I mean, I know in the old Dynasty mode, the NCAA 14 game, quarterback specifically was juiced, and if you played them early, they would get better throughout the season. There are other positions like if you played like a freshman linebacker, his overall wouldn't get much better even if he played a bunch. But like in Madden and stuff, like a lot of it's based off of you play a certain amount of snaps, in the franchise mode there, you'll progress. So yeah, generally I think that's probably, we'll see, right? That's kind of what's gonna be fun to see whose like strategy works best. But I think like leaning into development, both in terms of like the way the coaching staff is assembled, which is one of the traits, and then just actually like trial by combat or trial by fire, baptism by fire, excuse me, would be this isn't Game of Thrones. Baptism by fire would probably be the way to go to get your blue chip quarterback some like important experience points early on. So that's the strategy. We'll do some updates on those 24/7 and let you guys know how it's going. All right, I think that's everything except for I want to play some Buyer Sonone.
Ooh.
Yeah, let's do it. Who's it sponsored by, Zach?
The Turner Group.
The Turner Group. Colin and Amy Turner do just an exquisite job of real estate, of realty in Central Florida, buying, selling homes, and doing so in a way that's going to make their clients feel really comfortable. You're in really good hands because there's experience, there are connections throughout the state, and there's just like good people who are willing to go the extra mile to help you out. And we've already had a couple happy customers. I know it's not an easy thing to go ahead and decide you're going to buy or sell a home, right? It can be pretty daunting, but if you don't know where to start, Colin, Amy Turner, just Google the Turner Group, and they're really easy to get a hold of. I can help facilitate a conversation as well if that's something you've been thinking of. So I'll just slide in my DMs or PMs on the website or whatever crazy kids are calling it these days. The Turner Group can help you out. All right, Buy or Sonone. Starting off with Walk with Papuchis, everyone's favorite poster. Toa Philly, 400 plus yards receiving in 2024. Receiving yards over 400 for LT.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. How much did he have last year? 186.
Yeah, I'll Sonone that.
Zach had a point the other day brought up to me. You know who FSU's leading returning receiver is? Well, you know who it is, Zach. Just go ahead and say it, I guess. Sorry.
Kyle Morlock.
Kyle Morlock at 255 receiving yards is your returning leading receiver. Ja'Kai Douglas and LT are in the top 3 there. So there are receiving yards to be had there. I think 400 is aggressive. If you had said 300, I probably would buy it because I think LT is going to be a huge part of the passing game, more so than last year because you do have unknowns at wide receiver, really outside of Malik Benson, and even that, like he's still an unknown. I think you really need running backs to be part of the passing game, and LT is so unique because you can line him up in the slot, you can line him up out wide, and he's like regarded as a really natural pass catcher. And so I think he's going to be someone who's going to help you out supplementary with that. 400 feels like a lot. We'll see. I'll Sonone for 400. JM112, Brendan has blinked enough during this episode. What do you say, Zach?
Yeah, bye.
Okay. I've been emphatic with the blinking. Newberg, Knoll, Buyer, Sonone, Randy Shannon leads either Ty Jackson, Tavares Alfred, or Tavion Wallace. It's for you, Zach.
I mean, I think he has to land one of them, so bye.
Oh, so you think that there's like a no nonsense, like you have to figure out a way to get a linebacker, and those guys, one of them is essential. So you're basically like breaking the bank for one. Like
those two are like the 3 semi-realistic options remaining.
But you could not get one. Like you could get shut out.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But you're saying because of necessity, that's going to prompt.
Yeah. One of those 3. Yes. I think it's, with Ty Jackson, if you talk about each individual recruitment, with Ty Jackson, I mean, he's the guy that Florida State's going to host smartly on the last possible weekend that they can host prospects. I think it's that for the UF game, and signing day is that next week. If you guys remember, signing day got pushed up this year, so it's December 4th now instead of 3 weeks into December. So he's a prospect that they're going to try to make a late play for. I think with Tavion Wallace, obviously made the shocking announcement early this month that he was going to Arkansas. FSU is not going to stop recruiting him. I'd anticipate them getting him back on campus at some point. That won't be this summer, though, because he told me he's going to Arkansas later this month. And then TJ Alford is another top target at the position. He's committed to Ohio State. I'm not projecting a flip, but he did tell me that FSU is the best shot to do that, and that it wasn't outside the realm of possibility. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you look at their linebacker board, those are the three that are really still available for them, that are guys that are FSU quality, and they need to land one of them at least. So, yeah, I'd buy.
Buyer Sonone from Dirty D1693. Is that Dane's burner potentially?
Yes.
Buyer Sonone, sponsored by
the Turner Group.
DJU finishes top 10 in Heisman voting.
Sonone.
Also known it. I will say that there are people around the program who think he's going to be in that conversation. Like, there's a lot of optimism there. I think he'll be good for you this year. I do. I think there's a disconnect, though, between good and top 10. There's a difference there between that. But that'd be an amazing development. So I'll Sonone it. Chase 2-2, Buyer Sonone. An 11-2 season with another ACC championship win would be more enjoyable than last year's 13-0 season. Interesting. Because we have the hindsight, thank you, of how last year ended, right? And what didn't happen, plus Jordan Travis's injury, and also the pressure. Like, the fan base was antsy last year towards the end of the season. Like, if they weren't blowing teams out in the third quarter, like, there was frustration. I know, because I'm in group threads with Zach, and he represents the stereotypical fan in that regard of just wanting them to go ahead and throttle everyone, and knowing like what was at stake. The ACC championship game was one of the more enjoyable experiences I've had watching football in the last 10 years or so. Like, the way that team played, the pride you felt of just like being around something that was players were playing like bigger than themselves and beyond just their own individual like talents. Like, they were reaching a level that we didn't know, and maybe they didn't even know to some extent, like, that they could reach. And so I don't know, that would be tough to top. But looking at the totality of then what happened the next day, I think an 11-2 season, I'm going to buy. I think 11-2 would be really, really fun, because it would just be this justification that this program is here to stay. Like, this is a transition year in my mind, to an extent, and that would be exceeding expectations. Vegas has you at 9.5 wins. 11-2 with an ACC title would mean you shut down Miami when they were trying to, go ahead and take your throne and investing a ton in the program. It means you would have exceeded expectations externally, and you'd be in the playoffs. So yeah, man, 11-2 would be really fun. I'll buy. What about you?
I'd absolutely buy. I think because I think last year, I mean, the expectation was to win every game and to go to the ACC championship. If you go 11-2 this upcoming year, that's, in my eyes, it's exceeding expectations, and winning an ACC title is definitely exceeding expectations, and in the same light. So yeah, I definitely think that'd be more enjoyable.
Peanut Butter Jones, Buyer Sonone, brought to you by
the Turner Group.
We announce our exit from ACC by mid-August deadline. I will Sonone that. I don't think enough has happened in the courts to really give you the leverage to go ahead and do that.
I'll buy that, but I have no intel.
Okay. The way, like, there's been so much, we'll get into, there's been so much reporting in the last few days with Big 12 stuff. And I don't know, I just keep going back to like when Oklahoma and Texas jumped into the SEC a couple years ago. I remember I was going to ACC kickoff. I'd landed and I was driving, and I went up to a little bit north of Charlotte to get some barbecue, and I was driving back. And all of a sudden, like when I got to the hotel, checked Twitter, it was frenzied with that news that just dropped, and no one was expecting it, right? And last year with some of the Big 12 or Big 10 stuff with Oregon and Washington, a little bit different, where that was more discussed and talked about. But even then, that like changed. The reporting on it changed very quickly. Went from like not happening to all of a sudden like happening overnight. And so, point being is like there's not these usually buildups to this news. Like it just happens, and it happens very quickly. So we can say, Zach can say, yes, it could happen. I can say no. And I have some reporting where I can say, like, I don't think that's the expectation. And some people like at Florida State, I think in 2026, more likely, but like maybe something changes and shifts to where you go ahead and you have that happen. It's going to be really hard to know. That stuff is kept super secret, and more so than coaching contracts, more so than recruiting stuff. Like this is another level of information and secrecy to it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. We got a okay, here's a Buyers Known from Bud Elliott. So we have Bud gracing us with his presence with this is going to be a good one. Buyers to know. What?
A Bud or Sonone.
That's good. The Big 12 chatter is good for FSU, whether you believe it to be true or not. So it started a couple days ago with not Dan Wetzel with Yahoo.
Ross
Dellinger. Thank you, Zach. I haven't eaten yet today. I'm trying to do intermittent fasting. So me not eating early in the morning for the podcast, not great for blood sugar and concentration. So we're learning through several fasting podcasts now. Ross Dellinger reported and then kind of backtracked on the reporting too, and said it was more speculative, but he reported it in three different ways. It was on a podcast that Yahoo does. It was in an interview with a Big 12 reporter, and he wrote about the Big 12, talking about Clemson and Florida State as well. So it was pretty well in different forums it was discussed. And Ross is not irresponsible. Ross is a really good national reporter. There's at least someone he's talking to on what side and whose motives, is what you have to start kind of parsing out. But there's at least motives and there's interest, and the report that I believe to be the most significant part of it is that there's interest in conversations. The extent of which, I know people blood boiling thinking that there's legitimate interest on Florida State's side. I don't think that's a landing spot for you ultimately. I don't think Chris made this point. You're doing everything you're doing now to go to what will be the third conference, right? You're not going through the lawsuit. Yeah. You're not talking about exit fees of $100 million to $700 million, depending on what happens in court and negotiations to do this.
I can't imagine them going through all of that to end up in a conference that is assuredly not going to be one of the big two, which is obviously the Big 10 and SEC. You can't get left out of that equation. And I understand that the financial, hey, if they get a private equity investment, that they could be on par with those better conferences with revenue, and certainly better than the ACC with the yearly revenue intake. I can't imagine that they'd go through all of what they've gone through to just end up in the Big 12. And I think it'd be honestly a really bad look if that happened. Personally, doesn't
it depend, Zach, on who else joins though?
But even then, man, I just the private equity stuff, I don't view that as a long-term solution to the problem. I mean, if you get left out of the big two conferences, you're going to be considered a lesser product. And that's what Florida State just dealt with in the ACC. They got left out of a invitational because they were viewed as a lesser product because of their conference. So you cannot let yourself be put in that position again.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. That's fair. I do wonder what else it would look like who else you'd be bringing potentially.
Yeah, I understand. You can make the Big 12 this, decent conference. If you add Clemson, if you add, I don't know, Notre Dame or whatever, right? Miami, Louisville. if
you're talking about Notre Dame, and that's been talked about, that's been rumored. If you're talking about Notre Dame, that's different. With the prestige, Florida State, Clemson, Notre Dame, right off the bat there, that's not as good as the top three for the other. I mean, that's as good as the Big Ten's top three. No, Ohio State, Michigan, Who else is your other brand there? Penn State, no. Oregon or USC.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, you could argue that for sure. I cannot imagine that the Big 12 rivals those other two conferences. Just because, I mean, the top to bottom, like, yes, the SEC. Not every team in the SEC is this, world beater. I think they have, better quality top to bottom than what the Big 12 would be. But I could see that. I could see what you're talking about. Like, if you add a Notre Dame, if you add a
Texas A&M, if they wanted to get out, if they didn't like what happened with Texas, like these are reaches. These are unlikely things to happen.
I just can't imagine that ever happening, but you never know.
But Bud's question specifically was whether this chatter is good for FSU. And I think I know what he's getting at here. And also yesterday, Jason Shear over our Arizona website reported that that things are progressing with conversations. And his Big 12 reporting last year with Arizona and just some of the other dominoes that were falling with Big 12, that was really good. He was accurate with what was happening in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And I say that because now we start trying to guess what motives are. Like, if he's talking to, I don't think he's talking to Florida State or Clemson representatives, right? I don't think he's talking to TV networks. I hate guessing people's sources, but I'm more trying to connect, where is it coming from specifically? And it would be a Big 12 source that's saying this. So the Big 12 clearly has something it wants to get out there, because it presumably, it was all the buzz of what Ross Dellinger was reporting, and then now it's someone else in that range, whether it's Arizona based, because that's the team that Jason covers, or someone conference based. That's kind of what I'm interested in, Zach, is what's the motive there? And then is that good for FSU to be in these discussions? The fan base is going to say no. They don't think it's good to even be talked about. I would disagree. I'm going to say bye. Because one, it's public leverage for you. Two, people don't want to hear it. You don't want to end up in the Big 12. I get it. You have to listen. You have to see what it's going to be, and you need as much leverage negotiations to best land wherever your ultimate landing spot is. I think Big 12 is low in that totem pole, but people acting like there's 0% chance of it happening just because they don't want to, I think are probably incorrect as well. It's clear that there's something being talked about between these two sides, albeit an unlikely destination for FSU.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point that you bring up. I do think that the talk, there's value in the talk, and I, to go off what you just said, I don't think there's a 0% chance they end up in the Big 12. To be clear, I think there is some low percentage chance that it happens, but the talk is definitely. I can understand how that can be used for, as leverage for Florida State in talks with the other two leagues. And I think there is value in that. Just don't let the talk materialize into action.
Those are two different things, though. I think that's something important to remember. If you can withdraw the emotional aspect of it, it is probably ultimately a good thing for Florida. I don't think it diminishes your brand at all to have these conversations, contrary to what some would lead you to believe. Noel Chris, 2020, buyers to known. I saw you at Publix yesterday. Probably buy. I was at a Publix yesterday, frantically walking around, post yoga, still on a fast. I was probably freaking out because the line was longer than I wanted. Let's see, one or two more of these. We'll get out of here, Zach. Knowles, 1998, buyers to known, sponsored by
the Turner Group.
FSU will have a top 5 defense this season. Also known, you're talking about being elite of the elite. I think they'll be really good with the pass rush with what you have. I think the secondary with the 2 cornerbacks you have are going to be really good. I think you're going to have some excellent situational football. I'm not sold yet that down to down you're going to be elite yet.
I think it'll be 15 to 25 range more so.
I think 10 to 15 is more. I think it'll be a good defense. I do, and I think the way you're going to play on offense is probably, what you're going to have on special teams with punting. I think you're going to be in a good position more often than not on defense. But you also do play a pretty good slate of quarterbacks. Not an elite one, but there's just a lot, doing a lot of research. There's a lot of just solid above average quarterback play that you'll be facing this season. Not a whole lot of bad quarterbacks for the most part. All All right, last one, Zach, will be a recruiting one for you. This is from Durham Heel 15 or 5. Tough to tell at the end. By or Sonone, sponsored by
The Turner Group.
Summer official visits are more important for recruits than in-season or after-season official visits. Could also include unofficial visits in the discussion. He's talking about high school recruiting, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's more important towards signing the player. I mean, that's up for debate. I think it's just, if you look at, I'll buy that they're more important, because there are really no after season official visits anymore because of the new signing date on December 4th. I mean, that's, you don't have a weekend now to host prospects before National Signing Day. If you want to do that, it has to be an in-season visit on the last weekend of the regular season, the rivalry weekend, which is what Florida State will do with just a few prospects for the UF game. Yeah, I mean, it's the summer OVs have become super popular because most prospects want to make their college decisions before their senior football seasons, and schools are reacting to that. So they're hosting, I think Florida State hosted 39 official visits this summer. That's up a ton from past years, and they view it as more important than in-season trips, because they're not making in-season trips a real priority, besides for a select few players. It's just, if you look at the what an official visit is, I mean, think about a game weekend and everything that Mike Norvell has to do to prepare his team for a game, and make sure everything, the rest of the coaching staff's right there in that same boat. Like they have to make sure their position groups are good to go, and all the other logistics that go into preparing for a game. And to think that at that same time you're going to have to be prioritizing recruits on campus, that's just not super realistic. So I think that's why those in-season visits are, there are value to them, because of you can get them around a game atmosphere and all that, but you just don't get as much time with the actual coaching staff, and I think that's the true value of summer OBs.
And just how their calendars change too.
Yeah, the calendar is a huge. That's why it was my first point, because that's the biggest reason why they become so popular.
Yeah, it's like the hay's in the barn for 80% of your recruiting board at that point. A lot of it's just retaining and whatnot. All right, that'll end things for us. Last question, Zach. What's your first play going to be in college football in 25?
I keep seeing the what is it, the double reverse flea flicker or whatever.
Dude, that's mine too. Yes,
I've seen everyone using that. I'm sure they're gonna fix it, nerf it.
They have to
drops. Yeah, I mean it looks like that one streaking receiver is open every single time.
The deep post is like 100% hit rate anytime you watch it.
And then the jet toss pass is another one that hits it looks like 75% of the time. So if you guys want some early plays, that might be the move.
Yeah, they'll have to probably update it and fix it, because it looks like you can glitch both of those plays. Yeah, I think taking the top off the defense right away, set a freaking tone. It's the way to do it. All right, thanks to our sponsors, Chattanooga Whiskey and the Turner Group. For Zach Bossing, I'm Brendan Sonone. Thanks to everyone for listening to On the Bench. We'll talk to you later.